Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into the show. This is your host, Adelia Kirchner, and you are listening to Subtle Rampage.
Warning, the following program contains critical thinking, honest opinions, viewpoints on culture that may seem conservative, and a positive view on absolute detestable things such as marriage and children. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow human beings. So, this being a pretty holiday-focused week, whether that means Christmas coming up for you, or Hanukkah already being started for you, or whatever, I have a fairly long list of things to do, as do all of you, I am sure. So, this week, I decided to use my podcasting time, since this is my podcast and I get to make the decisions, as a way to decompress. But how, you may be wondering? Well, of course, by ranting about something that slightly annoys me in order to get it off my chest for the time being. And with that, you may be wondering, what is it, Adelia? What is it that slightly annoys you today? And you know what? I will tell you. In a minute. You're just gonna have to be patient, okay? Patience is a virtue. Work on it. I believe in you. But let me just preface this by saying, okay, music. We all listen to it. We all theoretically enjoy it. You know, maybe not all of it, maybe not all the time, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that everybody has some kind of music that is pleasant to their ears, whether that's freaking metal or, classical music or whatever it is, okay? Music is just this nice, wonderful thing that we can go to calm us down or to relate to the lyrics. All I know is that when I was younger, my parents put a decent amount of effort into only listening to, children-appropriate songs and worship music and things like that. I remember every time we were in the car, it was always 88.7 Way FM, type of vibes. And then I hit middle school, and I feel like around that age, everybody for the most part is kind of starting to get more involved or become more aware of pop culture and what's going on around them. I think that might start at a younger age now, just because of, kids having phones and social media and stuff like that. But I'm not of that type of childhood, I didn't grow up like that at all. It really wasn't until middle school age that I was exposed to more music on a regular basis than just, Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jack Johnson and Rafi and top 40 Christian music and that one song that's the Take the Shackles Off My Feet So I Can Dance. If you know that song, okay, that's a bop. To this day, that's a bop, to use my brother's language. But yeah, no, that's a good song. That's what I grew up with, and then in middle school, all of a sudden I was bombarded by top 40 pop and all these nasty lyrics and stuff, and I just remember thinking on a consistent basis, riding in cars with my friends, and when my uncle downloaded my first pirated music onto my flip phone, okay? I remember in those moments being my mom would not approve of this music. But because I hadn't really listened to any of this stuff before, and because it was popular with my friends, that was this new thing to me, and I was oh my goodness, this is so good, it's so fun, that type of stuff. Whereas literally a year or two before, I think I had been over at a cousin's house and they were listening to songs like that, and I'd been no, I can't listen to that, I'm not allowed to. So I don't know what exactly changed. I don't know if I was going through a rebellious stage in my Christian homeschool upraising, but that is what happened, that is what took place. I don't know if I wanted to fit in, and that's why I kind of bypassed my parents' kind of rules on everything, but I did. What's done is done. I'm pretty sure my parents don't hold it against me. If they did, I'm sure it would have gotten brought up at this point. I mean, it's kind of been almost a decade. But all that aside, okay, I think with my own music taste, it's definitely evolved over the years. But I'm just glad that when I was listening to all that top 40 stuff in middle school, one of the girls that I knew who was a few years older than me, she like was like, "Hey, why don't you listen to this song?" And it was like by Paramore, and then she like showed me Fall Out Boy, and I was like, "Oh, this is different. I like this." And then I kind of like started seeking out different types of music and whatever. But I think one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've had in my life is like watching other people discover like their music taste, like expand their music taste, because it's so fun to watch people do it. And my best friend's gonna be like, really? Another shout out. But I remember when we first met, all she listened to was country because that's what she grew up with, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not a country person. If you know me, you are fully aware of that. But I just remember like how much fun it was to expose her to like all these different songs that she hadn't heard of before. And she was just like, "Oh, I kind of like this. Oh, I kind of like that." And like for a while, our music taste was pretty similar because I was the one exposing her to all these new songs and all these new artists that she hadn't listened to before. And then it was even more fun once it got past that point because she started like searching for things herself, and then all of a sudden I've got a freaking metalhead for a best friend, who sometimes listens to like folk. Okay, like it's just great. It's like fun because there is so much music in existence, like so freaking much. And so to see people constantly pulling out new things and being like, "Oh, I found this. Oh, I found this. Oh, I found this." It's just fun. Like I like doing that, but like the things that pop up in her YouTube algorithms and her Spotify recommendations is going to be completely different than what pops up in mine. So sometimes she'll play a song and I'm like, "What on earth is this? I am so glad you played this." And like vice versa. And it's just one of those things where it gives a connection that I think you can't find in a lot of other things besides music. But where there is connection with music, a lot of times people form connections to artists. And I'm not knocking people, okay? You know, if you've listened to the same 4 artists with their maybe 20 albums collectively, and that's what you've listened to on repeat for the last 10 years, do your thing. I'm not as easily satisfied. I must find new things to listen to. My ears get tired and bored very easily. But when it comes to the actual people who are making this music that we listen to on a regular basis, one of the things that I've struggled with over the last, like, I guess 2 or 3 years at this point is how to separate the artist from the music. And I know this is a huge, like, debate in a bunch of other arenas. Like, how do you separate the actress from her politics? How do you separate the writer from his work? Like, how do you separate the gay lifestyle of a poet from his poetry? Like, you know, it's a conversation in every arena. I get that. Okay, but personally, I have a pretty, like, decent list of, like, my top artists who I always go back to their music. Even if I'm not listening to it as consistently, I always go back to them because it's just so good in my opinion, okay? And for a while, after I got social media, I was following these people on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. And at some point, I kind of had this revelation. I was like, I don't think I like these people very much. And then I was like, great, what do I do about that now? Like, I want to follow them. I want to keep up with their music. They post about when they're dropping new things. They post little snippets of covers. They announce new things that they're doing. And so I want to follow that. And I was like, okay, well, I just need to pretend that they're kind of separated from their music somehow. And then COVID hit, and I was still following a lot of these people on social media, and I was watching their stories and liking their posts, or at least looking at their posts, right? And things just got, like, drastically more frustrating as time went on, because I don't agree politically with these people, for the most part. I don't know if I would have really cared that we agree politically, except for now, there's certain things that are being said by people who disagree with me politically that kind of hurt. They kind of, hit you in the chest. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, do I need to be constantly reminded that the people who I support regularly by listening to their music, do I need to always be reminded that they wouldn't really like me or approve of anything I do with my life? Probably not. So I think in 2020, probably in the summer or something, I don't remember, I decided, I was like, okay, I guess I'm unfollowing all these people because I don't need to be bombarded by like negativity towards my viewpoints, right? However, unfollowing people, especially people who have huge followings, doesn't exactly stop you from hearing about them, right? Or hearing about what they say, right? So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit today and rant a little bit today, about this minor inconvenience in my life, pretty much. So, if you're down for that, good, because you've already spent a decent amount of time listening. And it would just be a waste of your time at this point to click off of the episode. So, yeah, next order of business here. I just want to preface the rest of what I'm going to talk about by saying I know that music artists being political is nothing new, okay? I'm not ignorant, I'm not stupid, at least I like to think I'm not. But, like, there's songs I listen to, like, by Bikini Kill, okay? Very, politically charged, angry women, at least from what I can tell in their music. So, yeah, there's that, you've got Green Day, okay? He's very political, the lead singer. So, I'm not gonna sit here and act like this is anything new. However, I have not lived life for 40 or 50 years at this point. A lot of experiences in my life are relatively new to me. So this is something that I've been having to come to terms with over the last couple of years, and deciding how I'm gonna handle things in order to best protect my emotions and, and my well-being. So that's that, right? Okay. But I guess since I already kind of discussed the whole social media thing, why don't we just jump right into one of my favorite things that came out of, like, the 2020 situation. Hayley Williams, those of you who are young, you know exactly who she is, and if you don't, you've been living under a rock, because her music and Paramore, amazing. But her politics, not my cup of tea, not my favorite, okay? It doesn't quite hit right. It doesn't hit the spot. I mean, it hits a spot. The spot that irritates me. So in August of 2020, there were like multiple articles that ended up being written on this, okay? It was like a big deal. Hayley Williams had been using her like social media all year to kind of speak out about this stuff and to like kind of share her opinions and play music from her solo album that she had put out and was continuing to put out singles to. So she was pretty active during that time because she was at home the whole time, at least to my knowledge, which sounds miserable to me. Personally, I'm not a fan of being home all day, every day for possibly a year or more and, hiding in my house because I'm scared of getting sick. But, again, that is just me, and that is just a personal sentiment. Anyways, Hayley Williams gets on her social media, she does a little video, right? And she goes, please don't come to Nashville, and like goes on this whole thing about tourists coming to Nashville and going up and down Broadway drunk and drinking and singing and whatever, and how it's not good for anybody and how it's not good for the locals. And she's pretty much like, the numbers are skyrocketing in Nashville and everywhere, and our people are dying, and the local businesses are suffering. So many businesses that make our town special are suffering, guys. And I'm like, well, yeah, because they've been shut down multiple times probably at that point, like, they've had curfews placed on them, they've been told they have to require their employees to mask, like, there's all sorts of reasons why businesses were not doing well, including the fact that people were being told to stay home and people who could were doing so. So it just kind of baffles my mind that it's like, businesses aren't doing well and it's the tourists' fault. Like, madame, do you know how big of an income source tourism is for states and cities? Maybe you should go sit in on the appropriations committee this legislative session. You know, not to say anything, because I don't think you would have anything to add, but just to, like, you know, hear. Like, just sit in for the tourism aspect of things. Just listen. Okay, because tourism kind of makes a lot of money. Businesses kind of make a lot of money off tourists in areas where people visit. I know, it's crazy. I'm spitting bars here. You've never heard this before. You've never even thought this before. You're welcome. I'm so smart. But anyways, let me go ahead and play a little bit of this video for you, okay?
What I'm about to post is, I think, should be required viewing for anyone who plans on making a selfish, quick getaway to Nashville, Tennessee in the middle of a global pandemic. I'm sure you watch the news. If you know anything, you know that the numbers are skyrocketing pretty much everywhere. Nashville's no different. Our people are dying. Our local businesses are suffering. So many businesses that make our town special and made it enticing in the first place. And tourists, people from out of town, are coming in and crawling up and down Lower Broadway, taking shots to terrible music. I just don't understand what the governor or the mayor are doing. So here I am on Instagram. Please don't come to Nashville. Plan your bachelorette party somewhere else this time. So I just posted it. Please watch that. If you plan on, or you're thinking about planning on coming to Nashville, don't. It's not the time. And our governor, our mayor, local officials will not listen. In fact, they arrest peaceful protesters who are masked, but they let tourists crawl over Lower Broadway, drunk and hanging out the sides of party buses. Like, that's not even Nashville. And if you really believe in Nashville, don't come here.
Okay. So I'm assuming when she's talking about peaceful protesters, she's like referencing like a BLM protest that happened in Nashville on July 4th of that year where people were arrested. But don't quote me on that one, okay? I was busy in Texas, hearing about the protests that were happening like in Dallas and even in the smaller cities surrounding it. So I wasn't like in Nashville, but I'm pretty sure that is the protest that she's referencing. Also, surprise, surprise, I don't think these people were being selfish. Hot take. But yeah, so anyways, that's that video. Apologies for the stuttering. I do that when I have no words to say to describe the things I am feeling. Translation: top quality content for your ears. And for the record, I did try to go through the comments on Twitter regarding this video, but it was just kind of painful, to be honest. There were a lot of people really focused on some, like, misspoken comments she made about, like, the music on Broadway that these drunk people were listening to being crappy. And, you know, a lot of the comments were just kind of like, I can't believe that you would criticize another musician, especially when you're probably making royalties off the covers of your music that they're singing, and they can barely get by because they're just a musician, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, there were a lot of comments like that, and then there were just a lot of comments going, I don't know why people are only focusing on the one thing you said about crappy music. We all know you didn't mean that. So there wasn't really anything that juicy in the comments, at least on Twitter, which is surprising to be honest, but at the same time, not really. Anyways, another thing that crossed my mind in relation to this topic is, okay, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but like, there was this like mini boycott of Spotify, the music platform that a lot of people listen to music on, right? And it started with Neil Young, you know, our man's Neil Young. Heart of Gold. It's a great song, by the way. But he decided that he was going to boycott Spotify over COVID-19 misinformation. He was pretty much just upset that Joe Rogan was still on the platform, which is just insane. But pretty much Neil Young was like, hey, Spotify, if you don't take Joe Rogan off of your platform, I'm gonna take my music off of your platform. And Spotify was like, well, Joe Rogan has like a crap ton more listeners than you do, and he makes us more money. So we're gonna keep him, and you can do whatever you need to do to, facilitate your little ego over there. And then Neil Young took his music off of Spotify and was like, ha, I win, woo! But yeah, shortly after he did that, Joni Mitchell did that, and it's like, why? Just why? Why? Just why? Really? Over a podcast where somebody said something you didn't agree with? Something that you deem misinformation, whereas what you say they might deem misinformation? Like, I don't get it. It was so stupid. But anyways, you can thank those two very, very humble musicians for the little banners on podcasts you see on Spotify sometimes where it's like, this contains COVID-19 information, blah, 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 whatever it is. Okay, I don't read it. They're everywhere. They're on Instagram. They're on YouTube. I'm like, at this point, like, why is it even there? That's kind of, it's another thing too, okay? I was at the movie theater the other day, and there was still a sign up that was like, stand 6 feet apart. And my mom was with me. It was me and the family, and my mom goes, yeah, it's kind of like, at this point, this whole thing is just teaching people not to pay attention to signs, because all these signs are still freaking up, and people are just going about their life at this point. I mean, I don't know about different states, but the states that I've been in, I'm like, nobody's paying attention to these signs. I'm sorry. Like, you're just teaching people to disobey the rules at this point by keeping them up. You just need to take them down and give up. Anyways, in the similar vein of Neil Young and Joni Mitchell going, hey guys, we're gonna save the world by doing something stupid. Another thing that kind of went down throughout all this COVID stuff, vaccination requirements for concerts. I'm sorry, like, okay, there's the younger artists who did that, right? Okay, and then there's the older artists. Okay, you've got freaking the band Fish, okay, put out like a whole statement and was like, guys, the best thing you can possibly do before coming to see us is get vaccinated. It's one of those things where it's like, come on, like, really? Like, I would like to see, like, the sanitary environment that your concerts way back when took place in. That's what I would like to see from all these older generation artists. Like, really? This is the one thing in your entire career you're gonna be harsh on? If I get vaccinated, can I still come smoke a joint at your concert? Or is that outlawed too? Are you just, getting rid of the cool uncle, hippie, rock and roll type of lifestyle? Are we just giving up on that now and kind of going the route of like, grumpy grandma is gonna enforce the rules? Like, is that what we're doing now? I don't understand. And I know, for those of you who are listening, I'm sure I sound a little bit glib. I'm not really being the most formal that I can be right now, but I did say that I was going on a rant. And rants are not formal, okay? They're not well thought out either, okay? They just happen, and they are often filled with a tone of irritation. So, if you are struggling to understand my contempt for these situations, that's okay, just bear with me. But yeah, I'm sure you can find out there's some sort of comprehensive list of artists who did this. Because, I mean, okay, don't get me wrong, it wasn't just artists that were doing this. I mean, venues were requiring it for concerts, and artists were playing there and had to kind of go with it. But a lot of artists were actually putting out statements to their fans saying, hey guys, this is required or encouraged or whatever. Like Maroon 5, okay, required proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test, okay. Dead & Co., The Grateful Dead with John freaking Mayer, okay, and it makes sense if you think about it, but it's like, come on, another older group, like, all the things you did in your youth and this is what scares you? Really? I want to know what drugs you took when you were younger. Because those probably scare me way more than this. Like that type of, that's kind of how I feel about this situation. But Yeah, the Killers, the Foo Fighters, frickin' Harry Styles, okay, Hayley Williams, okay, like Del Water Gap, Phoebe Bridgers, like all these people were just like, hey guys, we're gonna be requiring you to do something to your body medically so that you can attend a concert where you pay me lots of money to hear me sing. And it's like, dude, come on. Also, just to put it out there were protests. Like, there was a protest at a Bruce Springsteen concert because he required vaccine for COVID, and a bunch of people, like, stood outside of his concert and protested because they couldn't go to the concert because they weren't vaccinated. That was, like, the first performance of Springsteen on Broadway since the COVID stuff started. Right? Now, the article I read on that one quoted some guy talking about Nazis or something, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, to be honest. Another thing that happened that made it kind of difficult to separate artist and music like I would normally attempt to do is I got an email because I like to be in the know as to when my favorite artists are touring. And I got an email when Phoebe Bridgers went back on tour, and it had, you know, the link to concert tickets, and I like scroll down and I go to click on it, and then there's like this whole section of the email talking about how not only are a negative COVID test or proof of COVID-19 vaccine required to get into the concert, but also $1 of each ticket was going to go to the Mariposa Fund, or the Mariposa Fund, is probably how you say it, I'm assuming, which works to provide abortions, and I'm using the words from the email, okay, specifically for undocumented people who already face huge systemic barriers when trying to obtain safe reproductive health services. Now, what I think is kind of hilarious about that is, I'm like, okay, well, why are they undocumented? First of all, like, why am I giving money to people to get abortions in the first place? And then also, why am I giving money to people who aren't even supposed to be in the country to go get abortions? I don't. It doesn't, the connectors in my brain aren't clicking together right now. I don't really get it. Sorry. But when I saw that, I was kind of like, really? I'm like, I know it's just $1 of each ticket price, but that adds up. You know, when you're going on a whole tour with a bajillion tour dates, that adds up. That's a decent amount of money going towards providing abortion access. You're literally paying for people to get their babies killed. And so I was like, really? Can I not just give you money and then you use it to go buy a new car or something? Like, I don't know. Like, I appreciate the whole charity aspect of things, but if you ask me, paying for people's abortions is not charity. It's not. And I feel like if you ask a lot of people, they will agree. So yeah, that wasn't surprising, but it was also surprising. Also, this one's kind of funny to me. It is kind of funny to me. Okay, one of my other favorite artists, Del Water Gap, he put out merch and was charging probably, I don't know, $30, $40, I don't remember, for a shirt with his personal vax card on it. Like, he took his vaccine card, his proof that he got COVID-19 vaccinated, and he made t-shirts, and he sold merch. And I guarantee you people bought it and are wearing it around today. Like, I don't understand that whatsoever. I mean, you know, whatever. I don't really care about that one so much, but it's just kind of like, why would I buy this? Why would I spend money on a shirt that has your vaccination card on it? I don't know. That's just not how I would personally spend my money. But, you know, if he wants to restock the white socks that have Hanes on one side and FOTL on the other for Fruit of the Loom, if he wants to restock those, I will happily buy multiple more pairs. I own multiple pairs, but, you know, it's been a minute. You know, I should buy some new ones, but he doesn't have them in stock right now. So that's my major complaint from that scenario. Now, another thing that was kind of spawned from this whole COVID stuff, okay, was the whole live stream concert thing. And I know there were people doing these, okay, whatever. But it like really blew up with everybody being at home and whatever, and people not touring. So people were paying artists for live stream concerts and all that fun stuff. And then we're also artists doing free live streams where they would sing a couple songs, dance a little jig, and I'm guilty of this, not of being the musician, because I am not one, but I am guilty of watching them because, am I gonna pass up a free concert from somebody I enjoy their music? Like, no. And I even have a poster. Okay, I have a freaking poster from when Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie did his, little at-home live streams, at the beginning of 2020. And, I'm not gonna entirely knock it, because it was, this nice little thing. Everybody was freaking out. Nobody really understood what was going on. There were stay-at-home orders. All of a sudden, I was working at a fast food restaurant. All of a sudden, they were giving me a signed letter from, the CEO, just in case I got pulled over on my drive home. It explained that I was on my way from work, and if they needed any further, communication, they could call my supervisor. It was crazy. And so having this nice little thing where a favorite artist of mine was doing these little live stream shows, it was nice. It was this little snippet of joy, okay? So I'm not gonna knock it. However, I will knock the live streams with the freaking fundraisers, because so many artists do their live streams on YouTube, and it's free, but it's a fundraiser for a multitude of left-leaning causes. And I'm like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, that's great. It's when I click on a YouTuber's video and it's a fundraiser for abortion access. And I'm like, okay, I just want to know how many people would be outraged if they clicked on their favorite YouTuber's video and there was a pro-life fundraiser in the description. I just feel the outrage levels are a little bit different, a lot different. But it does kind of annoy me, because I'm I want to watch your video, I want to support you, I want to watch your live stream, I want to support you, I want to enjoy who you are and what you're doing. I don't want to help fund a cause that I don't support. I don't know, it's annoying. And if I notice that what I just clicked on to watch has one of those fundraisers, I usually just click off of it. I know there's already a view in there, but it's I mean, I don't really want to watch something that you're doing to promote something disgusting like that. But I was talking about Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie, and one of the things that Death Cab for Cutie did recently, and by recently I mean last year, was they released the Georgia EP. And for those of you who don't know what the Georgia EP is, it's just a tiny little EP, okay, of a few songs, and they're all covers of Georgia artists. Sounds great, right? Sounds like a nice little thing, sounds like a cute little thing. Now, why exactly did Death Cab for Cutie decide to go with Georgia for this one? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Voting rights. Voting rights, people. Okay, so I was reading the article that they did on it for the Rolling Stone. A week after the Democrats' victory in the Georgia runoff elections last year, the band released the Georgia EP to listen to on streaming services. They had previously only put it out on Bandcamp for one day, the year prior, to raise money for Stacey Abrams' Fair Fight organization. Now, supposedly, Fair Fight is all about fair elections and election access and free and fair elections, blah blah blah. Okay, but we all know who Stacey Abrams is. And if you don't know what Stacey Abrams thinks about things, I'll just play this little clip for you.
There is no such thing as a heartbeat in 6 weeks. It is a manufactured sound designed to convince people that men have the right to take control of a woman's body away from her.
Yes, you heard the woman right. The heartbeat of a baby on an ultrasound. Fake news. Fake. Fake. Babies don't have heartbeats. Stupid. Please don't take offense. I meant that stupid sarcastically, because I all know you guys know better. Anyways, that is whose organization Death Cab for Cutie was fundraising for, and they raised over $100,000 when they just released that EP on Bandcamp for one day the year before. Then they eventually made it available on streaming platforms because they were so happy with the results of the recent Georgia runoff elections. Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those situations where it's like, oh, this is one of my all-time favorite artists, and I want to sit here and be like, yes, a new EP, and it's covers, and that's interesting, and oh my god, I can't wait to listen to it. But at the same time, I was like, really? This is why you made it? Really? But anyways, I'm going to talk about one more thing here. And that is another one of my favorites. Okay, Paramore has gotten back together and they've written another album. The last album we got was several years ago, so this is like a nice little, exciting thing, right? So far, the band's released 2 singles, one called This Is Why and one called The News. This Is Why, you can kind of tell it's about feeling helpless during COVID, staying at home, this is why I don't leave the house type of situation. And then The News, I think the point is like the 24-hour news cycle and it never shuts off unless we shut it off, but then we feel guilty for not paying attention to what's going on around us, blah blah blah. That's the gist I get from the band talking about it. But my thing here is like, I like the sound of the songs, but my frustration comes with the last couple years of Hayley Williams, the lead singer, being so vehemently outspoken about what she thinks, like politically and about COVID and like all sorts of other stuff, right? And so my question for myself, at least, is, am I even gonna be able to separate the artist from the music in this instance? Because, I saved This Is Why to my music. The News, I don't know how I feel about it yet. But the rest of the album, I don't know what it's gonna be like. Supposedly it's not all gonna be political, but that's a quote from the band, so I don't know about that. And I guess what I'm saying is that if this had been an album that they were releasing 2 or 3 years ago, like maybe at the start of COVID, or like before that, I probably wouldn't have put too terribly much thought into it, but just because of all the things that have been said and like kind of put out into the world about people who think like me, or, just the division in general and the hatred towards other people, I have a harder time separating what the artists think from what's in the music. And like, typically I would just take something and be like, okay, well maybe the artist meant it that way, but I can interpret it like this. And in this instance, I don't know if I'll be able to. We'll see, but I don't know if I'll be able to. I'm already kind of hitting a mental block there. Especially since in an article where Hayley Williams was talking about this new music that they're putting out, she was pretty much going over how, like, shocked she was to realize how humans have been unkind to each other, okay, even during, like, all the COVID stuff. And she said, "You'd think after a global pandemic of effing biblical proportions and the impending doom of a dying planet that humans would have found it deep within themselves to be kinder or more empathetic to something." And then she also said, "How sad is it that we've gone through this horrible thing globally as humans, whether it's racism or conspiracy theories. I think about how the internet is supposed to be this great connector, but drives us further inward and further apart. I've watched people be so awful to each other. How could we go through these things together and come out worse?" Now, Hayley Williams, because you, in all your stardom, are listening to this, I think I might have an idea as to why things might be worse in regard to people's relationships after the last couple of years. And that is that all of a sudden there was a narrative being pushed by the government, and it went down to a million other segments of our life, okay, that said there is a right way to approach this, and there is a wrong way to approach this. And if you think anything other than what we're saying is the right way to do things, then you are wrong and you are a bad person. And you are selfish and you're murdering other people. You're killing others by going out into the world unvaccinated. You're killing others by going out into the world without getting yourself COVID tested for the 3rd time this week. It was like that type of thing, and I think people on one side didn't realize how hurtful it was to people on the other side, and that's where you get a lot of the divide that is still here, even though things aren't as intense in regard to all the COVID stuff. When people choose to alienate other people, when people choose to annihilate the character of a person, of a group of people, I mean, it just is what it is. There's not going to be any unity in that. You can talk about unity all day long, but the reality is that if you made the decision to do those things, you weren't looking for unity. You were looking for division, because that's what that causes. And I'm being serious. I'm saying people were looking for that division. They wanted there to be division. Maybe not in the way that we've seen long-lasting, but they wanted that division at the time. And some people still really, really want that division now. Okay, if somebody is vaccinated and they don't want to be around anybody who's unvaccinated, they're asking for there to be division. If somebody wears a mask and does not want to be around anybody else that refuses to wear a mask, or maybe it dropped below their nose at some point in their grocery store shopping, like, that is somebody asking for there to be division. The family members who told other family members, hey, you can't come to Thanksgiving this year because you're not vaccinated, or because of the way that you thought throughout this whole thing. Those people were asking for there to be literal division. And so, people like Haley Williams and a million others, honestly, can ask all day long and question and philosophize all day long about how we went through these things together and came out so much worse. And the reality is that we didn't go through these things together because there were people who asked for there to be division. So there was. And now there still is. And it sucks. I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be honest. I'd like to just, click redo on the whole thing, okay? And, not have to go through any of it. Because it didn't affect personal relationships in a great way for the most part. It didn't affect family relationships in a good way for the most part. I mean, there are just a lot of decisions that were made over the last couple years that are going to have lasting consequences. And people really can't do anything about that at this point. Things are the way that they are. Those decisions have already been made. And you can do your best to remedy them, and hopefully that works for you in your personal life. But as a culture, as a society, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it just is what it is at this point. We just have to suck it up and deal with it now. I mean, you can't go back to before people asked for that division. But that's just my thoughts on that. And I'm not sure if there is a perfect way to go about this type of stuff. I mean, if I was a music artist and I felt strongly about a cause, I'd want to say something about it as well, probably. I guess it just comes down to, what's important to you, what you deem more important. In a way, some of this stuff does alienate a portion of your audience. And, well, what I would say is probably a decent chunk of your audience. However, I get the impression that most of the artists that do make the choice to talk politics, especially in an aggressive way, they know that they're alienating certain people. And I'm sure they might even prefer that people who disagree with them stay away in some instances, like I was talking about with the division. I'm sure there were music artists, even the older ones probably, who came out and said, get vaccinated or you can't come to the concert. Those people were probably making that decision. They were saying, hey, I feel this way, and I have my reasons, and if you disagree, don't come see me. And to a lot of people who follow artists very, very closely, who have been lifelong fans, I'm sure that was probably kind of a punch in the gut. It was kind of hurtful, probably. And for as much as I have ranted about this and kind of probably had an irritated tone this entire podcast, for me, a lot of this stuff is a slight inconvenience. Okay, it's a minor annoyance in my life. I have more important things to do, more important things to spend my mental and emotional energy on. Okay, it's not the end of my world not being able to follow an artist on social media or not being able to listen to their entire discography, okay? But I just think that the flip side of things is kind of funny. Because like I said earlier, if a YouTuber, okay, had a certain fundraiser on there and it was pro-life, there would probably be a whole lot more outrage from the opposing side than there is on videos where there's the pro-abortion fundraisers. And, if these artists or YouTubers were putting out right-leaning merch or right-leaning politically charged songs, okay, there'd probably be more of an outroar. It'd be loud, okay, because I think, one side is a bit louder than the other, especially on the internet. And I don't know if that thought says more about the left's unhinged emotional attachments to things, or the right's nonchalant attitude towards politics that ultimately leads to our views getting run over with a bulldozer, but it's just kind of something that I think applies to this situation. On one hand, I think that those of us who are conservative or Republican, whichever you go by, if we're gonna play the identity politics game here, but for those of us who are on the right, I think a lot of people are more interested in their lives. They're more interested in their family, or their friends, or both, okay, and making sure that they're secure and they're good to go. It's more focused and more energy spent on what's going on in their life right then and right there, and taking care of those things. And politics just seems like a lot. And then, even for those people who are paying attention to politics, cultural issues are a whole nother ballgame. Yes, I think politics and culture are pretty synonymous with each other, but the whole culture aspect of things with all the music and the art and the this and the that, okay, it adds a whole crap ton of layers on top of what is just politics. So I feel like a lot of the time, people on the right don't have the energy or don't prioritize spending time being loud about issues. Whereas people on the left, that is kind of one of their biggest things, is activism, is being loud. That is one of their main characteristics. That is one of the main things about the Democrat Party in its 2022-esque form, okay? And I say that, but of course, the last several years, last decade, whatever you want to say, okay? But I'm just saying, modern Democrat Party is very much the activism party. And so, of course they're going to be louder on things like this. Either way, that's about all I have to say on that. I mean, I could go on for a long time, but this is about all I'm gonna make you suffer through for this week. So thank you all for being my surrogate friend as we all prepare for the holidays, or enjoy our holidays, depending on what it is that you celebrate. If you've been listening on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you get one every single week when a new episode is uploaded. And if you're listening on a different streaming platform, go ahead and follow the podcast so you're never out of the loop. New episodes air every Wednesday morning, so you'll hear from me next week.